So we were talking about benefits of yoga and meditation helping yourself when you're in a down spot and low. Um, what are some of those tactics you have for people with meditating and yoga to help them get out of their low? And then not only that, like for me, I can do those a lot when I'm in a low, but then when I'm like feeling good and life's going good, like I don't do it as much. How do you keep track of that, and how do we keep?
Oh,
How do
my
you do that in a
goodness.
sense?
Well,
And you're a yoga
I'll,
instructor,
I'll
correct? Just want to make sure, right?
I'm a yoga
That's
instructor,
awesome.
and I've been following and dabbling in a lot of different spiritual practices through most of my adult life. And I
Mm.
guess I want to say that I'm one of the most consistently inconsistent people that I know. So I'm not coming at you as some
That's
like
funny.
perfect yogi person. I have a really difficult time meditating. I've even done, full Vipassana in Thailand, which is a full silence, full 11 days of silent retreat with monks. And even at the end of that, I still had a really difficult time just doing straight up silent Vipassana meditation.
Okay.
So, okay, go ahead.
I'm wait now.
Yes.
I'm very curious. So what is this that you went to Thailand and you did 11-day?
But yeah, Vipassana is probably the most widely known and classic form of meditation, which is just sitting and counting your breath, sitting and being still,
Okay,
which is really difficult. You get stuck in your head. Like
I
for me, a
agree.
lot of these crazy things were buried inside of me that I didn't fully realize until I was just alone with myself and alone with my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
I feel like that's a lot of reason why people don't want to meditate is because they start to meditate, right, and then they get all these thoughts in their head, and then like and it's circulating and they're going, and they don't maybe they don't want to face them, or it's overwhelming or something. But like, I mean that's like kind of the reason for meditating is you kind of work through those things that you don't normally get to
yeah,
internalize. And
exactly. I'm sad that our last conversation got Mercury retrograde ate
I,
it because there's some really good things in there with
there
just
were.
coming to terms with who you are and with your own struggles.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of envisioned it as having some kind of like a festering wound that has healed and scarred over, but there's still the infection underneath.
Ooh, okay.
And if you don't treat it, it's just going to get larger and larger. And when you do go in to treat it, it's going to be a much bigger surgery. But if you catch it at the beginning and you're like, oh shoot, this didn't heal properly, let me open that up now. It's still going to be painful, but it's going to be less painful than if I don't deal with it later on. And that's not just
Mm-hmm.
meditation, that's any kind of trauma, that's therapy. There are so many different ways to
Agreed. Yeah.
get into the emotional subconscious and try to figure those things out. But I definitely deviated. What I was trying to say is that meditation doesn't come naturally to me. I'm in my head a lot. My mind is always active. So there's some different tools that I use. Like the mala beads are really, really helpful to me. So what these are is there's 108 beads on them, and they're either the Buddhist or Hindu prayer beads.
Okay.
And so when I meditate, I take thumb and finger, and each bead I recite a mantra. And sometimes that's a Sanskrit mantra to a certain deity, and sometimes I just say thank you. Sometimes I just say thank you for being alive.
Mm-hmm.
And having those words repeated over and over and over in your head gives your mind something to focus on so it doesn't try to run away as much. And after you repeat it so many times, the words stop having meaning, and it's almost like the energy of the words starts to take over instead. There are also a lot of really great apps now. We're in the age of technology. Like
Right.
Headspace is wonderful.
Yes, that's one of the ones I've
And
heard of.
yeah, Headspace is great. I was just also gifted these little things that make these tonal sounds for 3 minutes by my father. He uses them to meditate, so I've been playing with those a little bit. I think one of the biggest things for people to take away is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to go to Thailand and meditate with monks to meditate. You don't have to do an hour a day.
Right.
Make it attainable. Start off at 3 minutes. Anybody can do three
Yeah.
minutes a day, and then maybe you work your way up. I try to do 10 minutes a day, but there are definitely mornings where I have stuff to do, or I sleep in, or it's been a late night the night before, and maybe I'll go a week or a couple of weeks without meditating, and then I start to feel a little bit off, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me get back on my regular routines. Doing
Mm-hmm.
anything at the same time any day is also really helpful. So you're establishing these routines and these patterns. It's hard to do something at a different time every day, but like, for me, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I get dressed, um, and then I meditate for 10 minutes and maybe do a little bit of journaling, and then I'm allowed to have my coffee.
Oh, okay. A little
So it's just
reward.
how I,
Yeah,
yeah,
kind
just
of
how I
thing.
started off. As far as yoga goes, I also have a really hard time doing my own self practice. So being part of a community, being part of a studio is really helpful to me. I know that it's COVID and I'm not sure how many studios and whatnot are open, but finding a teacher that you resonate with online can be really, really helpful. And watching, watching videos from the same teacher.
Hmm.
And for yoga, there are so many different styles and so many different ways to practice. It can be really, really meditational, really zen, really gentle, or it can be like full on LA power flow where you get a workout out of it.
It's
So
very
I've
true.
talked to some friends who have tried, they're like, oh, I tried to go to yoga, I didn't like it. I'm like, well, what did you try? That's like saying, let me put it in festival lingo. That's saying like, oh, I listened to a DJ once and I didn't like it, so I don't like any
Any
EDM.
EDM. Right, right, right. Yeah.
There's so many different genres and subgenres, and then each DJ within that subgenre has their own unique energy. So sometimes it really is about finding that. And for some people, maybe it's hiking, maybe it's circus arts, maybe it's going to the gym. I think that anything that puts you in a state where your body and your mind and your breath are moving together,
Mm.
like that is yoga.
Interesting take on that. I've never thought of it in that sense of just like you connecting your body and your mind in one. That's kind of the way that's what I was going to ask. It's like, isn't that because I've never done yoga. I'll be honest. I've never done a class or
No
anything,
judgment,
but
no
but
judgment
I'm
at
intrigued
all.
by it. And so in my head, is yoga in a sense like the spirit connecting to the physical world, quote unquote? Like you're kind of connecting it to of like your mindset and your body. And you just brought up that point of like, oh, working out, hiking, like all those could technically be yoga. So that made me really think like, oh, maybe that is the thing. Like it's connecting your mental mind to the physical world in one way or another.
Yes, you just worded that so good.
Oh, okay, cool. I got lucky
And yoga, yeah,
there.
when as we think about yoga in the US, we only think about the physical practice, the asana. But yoga in classical sense means, yeah, it means to yoke, which means just to connect. And
Okay.
traditionally, the physical practice of yoga is maybe under 10% of the entire spiritual practice of, doing good deeds, having good thoughts, meditating, kindness, charity. All of those things are classical yoga. And of course, the modern yoga has just taken it and made it completely physical. But I think that people beginning with that physical, it can definitely lead to all these other changes in the rest of their lives. Like when I found yoga when I was 21, I think, and it absolutely changed my life. Um, yeah, I was waitressing at the time. I was partying a lot. I had beginning scoliosis, and I was really blessed to have free yoga classes offered to me up the street from this tea bar I was working at. And these were really special classes. You guys can look up Les Leventhal. He's still teaching. But Les was this like short, really buff, really hairy, tattooed Jewish gay man. And the studio was in the very center of the Castro district in San Francisco, which was the gay district. And so
Okay.
I'd go into this giant room covered with murals with 60 people with, like mohawks and tattoos and just so much diversity in this room. And
Right.
everybody would chant together and do these really intense flow classes. And I was so out of shape. I just got hooked on the energy and I would sneak out of a lot of these classes because I just couldn't physically finish it. But then again, that's probably mental. but I kept on going back. There was
Hmm.
something about that that made me feel connected to something higher and connect to this community. And it probably took about 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years after that for me to get my own yoga teacher certification. And now I teach as a way to stay connected with my community and to stay connected with my own body. I definitely hold myself to a higher standard of wellness when I know that I'm in a teacher position, even though that's not what I really want to be doing with my life. It's like a happy hobby that that helps me mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, that's funny. I've never been, so I'm trying. So, do you also feel like a connection with those in the room? And you mentioned the community connection, and is that something that's also there where you're feeling that connection with those that are around you, and you're all coming out of it like, "Ooh, that was great!" Like I'm fascinated by it.
Oh
Like I said,
yeah,
I've never been, so
absolutely. And again, I'll put this in festival scenario too. You know, sometimes you go to a DJ set and like it's all right, you know, and everyone's like, okay, whatever. And sometimes you go and just they just throw down and everybody is sweating and
right.
smiling and dancing together, and you get into this place on this crowded dance floor where you're dancing and you're grooving, but you don't actually hit anybody else. Or maybe if you do, it's like this really sweet little smile and you just keep on dancing. Like
Hmm.
that's to me, what a good yoga class feels like, is when everybody is synchronized in breath and energy and intention. And you walk out and yeah, you're smiling at each other and giving each other high fives. And you just released so much and filled it back up with goodness. You know, exhale the bullshit, breathe in the good shit.
Is that what one of the sayings is? That's one. Is that one
That's
of
one
the,
of the things I
that's a
say. I'm
yoga
one of
saying.
those. I'm one of those yoga teachers. Like,
I mean, I like it. It's funny. I haven't actually heard of that. So that made me think of. Now I'm gonna think of here when I hear that. I'm gonna think of yoga every time now.
perfect.
Does it have benefits? This is just a personal question for me. I always have trouble sleeping. I just have a mind that's constantly racing. So for me, it's very hard for me to fall asleep at night. So I'm more of a night owl. Doesn't really work well with that 9 to 5 schedule. But is there a
Hmm.
yoga that is done that can possibly help a person, kind of relax and go to sleep easier?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, just getting a good workout, whether it's power yoga or anything else. I think at this point, we all know that that's proven to help you sleep more because you're outletting a lot of that energy and using your physical body.
Mm-hmm.
As far as sleeping, there's yin yoga, which is really mellow and holding poses for a really long time. Yoga nidra has recently been getting more widely known, which is almost like this meditation trance yoga.
Okay.
Really, really trippy. Sound healing definitely isn't yoga, but I feel like it's in that same kind of family and is often combined with yin or with yoga nidra. Sound healing absolutely trances me out and calms me down. So I'm
So
the same way as you. Then like, not eating before you go to bed and turning off the screen a few hours before you
yeah,
go
the
to
screen
bed.
might be where my downfall goes. I might be out there
It's
watching.
real. It's absolutely real.
Yeah, that blue light. I've started to wear like blue light glasses while if I'm looking at my screen all at night. I don't know
I've
if
been wanting to try those. Have you noticed a difference?
I it's a little too early for me to tell, but I will definitely keep you updated. Yeah, I found a pair of these. I'm holding them up. Not anyone can see it if they're listening to the podcast, but I found a pair at like Five and Below for like $5. And I don't know if it's as good as the ones that are online. I know they have some online that are like 100. I was not about to pay $100 for blue light glasses, but I bought those for 5. And I do notice a difference when I'm looking at the screens. If I'm at the studio all day, I can put them on, and my eyes don't feel as strained and yada yada. So I'm just kind of testing them out this past week, and I'm gonna see where it goes. I haven't noticed too much of a difference yet, but maybe it'll catch up to me in like a week or two. I'll be like knocking out really easy. So I'm hoping. I'm tired of waking up
Yeah,
just tired, and it's not like I'm doing anything different. It's just like I said, I'm go. So like my mind's just racing, and then I'm laying there at night, like just trying to sleep, and it's like, well, what about this? Hey, what about this? What do you think about this and this and this? And I'm got all these thoughts, and I'm like, I just want to go to bed. I want to sleep for a little bit.
well
And
that's real. I would you said that you have Headspace already. I would recommend trying to put on Headspace
okay,
for some sleep specific meditations before you go to bed. And also that's kind of part of what Vipassana and what a lot of meditation is. There's, ideally in a perfect world, you just don't have any thoughts and you're focusing on your breath.
Right,
But
right.
in reality, you start off by acknowledging your thoughts, by almost watching them, but
Mm-hmm.
not getting caught up in them. I say, like, observe your thoughts like they're clouds in the sky and release attachment to them. Just let them keep on flowing.
It's kind of
So, you
ties.
have,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead,
we
continue.
talked about this a little bit too before, which isn't
That's
recorded,
I know
with
that's why.
with trauma stuff, but just how we can get caught in these little loops. And you
Yeah.
can have this random thought come in. You're like, oh, what am I cooking for dinner tomorrow? Or this random memory comes up and you start to relive that. If you can have those little thoughts come in, and rather than chasing them and following them, you just go, okay, that was a thought. I'm going to let it go now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was gonna say we just were talking about this earlier with trauma and such. You can get in these repetitive cycles, and it's it's crazy how powerful our mind is. It is something that when you put that energy forward, you put that thought forward and out there, you're now giving off this energy vibration to the rest of the world and everything, and in the universe will return that type of energy. So yeah, you have these negative trauma thoughts. Well, yeah, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back towards you and kind of haunt you in a sense, and you might fall into these old patterns and whatnot. And we were discussing how it falls on the individual person and how it comes down to you yourself. No, at the end of the day, no matter how much help you have to really make those new changes for that positive lifestyle, to put out that positive energy into the world. Um, but yeah, we were just kind of talking about that earlier. I didn't want to bring it up again, and
No, but it was so good. We had some really beautiful segues. We were talking a lot too about how, um sorry, my little dog just started snoring and distracted me.
oh, it's
I'm gonna
adorable.
show you.
The little puppies.
um we were talking just about trauma in general and how it's one of the
Yeah,
biggest catalysts for healing and for growth,
it is. I
and
agree.
how you can take this trauma and you can get caught in it, and how it can kind of fester up and come and bite you in the ass later, or you can
Hmm.
pass it on, or you can really drop into it and do everything you can to evolve beyond it and to not pass it on.
When you say
um
pass it on, do you mean to other people, to a young, like or your child? Like, what do you mean by that when you say pass it on?
yeah, I guess either both of those.
Both of those?
There's Yeah, this
Sorry.
goes back to different things that are discussed in the book too, so I'm really excited for you to read it. Um, we all know that, like, the biggest bullies when we're kids are probably getting bullied at home or have some kind of negative thing there.
Very
So
true. Very true.
so there's a really good example of passing it on and seeing it actualize in another person. It's like having being cheated on or having your heart broken and being afraid to be vulnerable with your next relationship, and maybe somehow giving them trauma because you didn't deal with your own stuff and you have that
Wow.
that projection on other people.
Yeah, yeah. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, if you're not internalizing your relationships or your past failures, you can easily put that onto somebody else, and not intent. You could even do it not intentionally, but you are projecting that.
Oh, absolutely, you
Yeah,
can absolutely do it non intentionally. I think most of the time people are. I really doubt there's a lot of people out there that are intentionally trying to just mess up other people, but we all have our shit and it all comes out in the way that we interact. Like, I think that the most positive people are the ones that you're going to blossom under, because they have these really high expectations of you, and so you
yeah.
want to make them happy, you want to match them. And it's the people that are projecting that they think you're going to fail, or that you're going to cheat on them, or that they're afraid of this or that, then it's hard not to internalize them, especially if it's somebody coming from a position of power, like a parent or a teacher, or a partner.
Yeah, it's interesting the influence of a position of power, like you kind of just mentioned, how you could have, like, I look at back in, like, you can look back in like high school and even in college. There's certain professors that you can think of that were very great. They were very positive. They have these. You look back on them and you're like, wow, like they taught me so much, not just about school, but they taught me about other stuff, and they made me feel. I would leave that class and I would feel good. I feel good about myself. Oh, even if I hated the subject, like, wow, I actually just enjoy I just enjoy it because of the teacher. Like I'm down to go, and then in reverse as well as when you have those bad partners, bad teachers and stuff like that. You can look back on those and say, yeah, that was just a dark place, dark time in my life because of the person I was next to, and it really does bring to light when you look back on those the cliche thing of like, well, you are who you are with, something like that. I can't remember the exact saying. All of a sudden, it's just like eluded my head.
It's you're the conglomerate of the five people that are closest to you.
Yes, that is the way it goes. Yes, sorry, I forgot what it was.
No, it's all good, which I definitely believe. I when I look at the people that I surround myself with now, I feel so grateful and so strong and so inspired.
Yeah.
Like I think that one of my favorite things about being in my 30s is seeing all the incredible shit that my friends are doing. You know,
Yeah.
all these people who are just like little raver babies and like in festival kids running around. You know, they're now starting like just like God, I'm just my best friends at the moment. I have one best friend who's a an amazing designer and is like in GQ with like her watches and does all these crazy set arts. I have another
Wow.
best friend who gets cannabis prisoners out of prison and is in Detroit right now with Sean King. I have another best friend who just had a baby and has a fashion company that supports fair trade women in India. I have another friend who runs a
Wow.
nonprofit for handicapped children. Like it's insane. And these are all my party sisters back in the day.
Right.
And now we're just all freaking crushing it. Like I'm in development for a website that empowers chefs in the health and wellness industry. I cook for
Yeah.
yoga retreats and I just launched my book. So like I had no idea back then these are the women that we would turn into, and it is so freaking cool to be in my 30s and just get to brag about my friends.
When you look back with those memories and you're like, yeah, we all partied, we all hung out and yada yada, but yet here we are. When you look back at
Mhm.
that, I'm curious though, did you see potential in those girls? Were they, because I think there's so many in guys included, you can get caught up with certain friends that you're having a great time with. You are having a great time with and you're having fun, but yet at the end of the day, they might not have your back in the way a close friend would. So was there like a distinction of like, wow, these girls, yes, we're having fun, but they're not dragging me down, they're not dragging my name, they're not talking shit behind my back, and they're just bringing me up, yet we're all still having fun.
Yeah, 100%. There was just that universal love and support and space holding for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I really feel like being in Burning Man circles, being in festival circles, doing all of that fundraising and volunteering gave a lot of us the tools to build up these businesses that we have now. Like I didn't know that I liked spreadsheeting or being in charge until I was planning fundraisers. Like
Oh,
I
that's true.
didn't know that I liked to bring people together and create sacred space until I was doing that for festivals and for Burning Man. So I think that even though, you know, you might look and be like, oh, it's just a festival or it's just a rave, it's just that. It really is community growth. You're investing in learning how to organize, you're investing in understanding finances at least a little bit. And you're really investing in community and seeing how people interact with each other and how to empower them to do what they love to do. So yeah, I absolutely believe that all of this came through. And we also got to get really, really freaking wild. And I feel like outlet a bunch of that from our systems. Like I've lived that life. I still like to dabble in it here and there, but I've done all of that. I
Yeah.
don't yeah, there's I don't have any like, oh, I wish I had been wilder. That would be crazy. Or I wish I had done this. So it feels better now to be in my 30s and to be in my little sacred cottage in Maui and just be hustling and focusing on my health because yeah, I don't have any regrets.
There's a valid point of saying like you got that out of your system kind of early, where you're just like, oh, it's gone. Like I don't have to worry about it now. I want to focus on me and hustle and yada yada. Because
Yes.
there's the opposite where people are so entrenched in their work and whatnot at the beginning and at a young age that they miss all of that, and then they get older and they get money and then they just go crazy and they're just like, like I'm just spending like like, you know, I'm trying to think of examples within like Hollywood and such, but there's plenty to go around that people can think of that are listening, like where you just someone just goes crazy because they're not used to it. They're like, oh my god, I have all these new opportunities and I just want to do I want to do everything I can do, and then they're 40 and they're like, what are you doing? You're 40 years old, like get it together.
That's true. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Some of my best Burning Man friends can still throw down in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, and I have so much respect for that. But I do see what you're saying. It's finding, yeah, it is finding that balance, and I think that you can learn these things young. You know, you learn how to handle yourself in these different situations when you're in these festivals and Burning Man. Like for me, I was really exposed to a lot of diversity, a lot of spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of community work, a lot of awareness about the environment and ecological things. And I think that when you're in those environments and your mind's kind of blown open from whatever the reason is, that you're able to absorb more because you're not already full of, I don't know, ideas. I don't know if don't quote me on that. I don't know if I liked that tangent, but there's definitely just like this openness and this beauty that happens when you're young in those places. And for me, at least, I think that it absolutely helped meld me and gave me the tools to be who I am today. And I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're young, there's those opportunities to be exposed to so many different things, and some good, some bad. But for the majority of things, you can open your mind and learn new things and listen to what others have to say and get a new perspective when you're young, and that helps build you into that person you are later in life. And those are important. It's important to keep your mind open, though, especially at a young age. I feel like because we have so many inputs, and it's very easy to be determined and stuck in one mindset. I've had issues with that myself, that I have been working to not be like that anymore. It just kind of hit me one day out of the blue where I was like, damn, I've been like really, really rigid and like thinking of the ways I've been thinking. And when you realize that, it's kind of like you almost want to slap yourself in the face and be like, what are you doing? Like you're like, there's so many different ways of doing things. There's so many different ideas, and that's something I mean, I'm learning now, like I said, and there's so many things you can learn, and keep your mind open. It's super important, because I'm not saying you have to keep it open to everything, because obviously are some things that are bad, but to hear other sides of stories and hear other sides and other points of views and just listen, and from there listen to the opposite of that and then form your own opinion. Like that's what it's so important to do, especially in my opinion at any age really, but specifically at a young age.
I almost argue that it's more important when you're older, because it's a lot easier to get set in your ways because you have all these experiences.
Yeah.
No, I love being challenged. I love having people around me with lots of different viewpoints and different experiences. I've spent a lot of time in my 20s traveling and backpacking, and I always loved going to different places and being taken out of my comfort zone. We definitely have this, the societal belief system of how things should be, of how we're supposed to be eating, of how relationships start to work, et cetera, et cetera. And going to festivals where there are these alternate cultures, and going to different countries. Wow. And really seeing that this is just what we were taught in America or in our little towns. Yeah. I think that it's really empowering, because it allows us to have the understanding that we get to really choose our own path. We get to choose our own life. We get to choose how to love, how to live, how to eat. That's pretty.
Yeah, you hit it right in the head. I mean, it is. It's and that's the other thing about traveling. Not to go on a tangent about traveling, but it does open your mind and your viewpoints on so many different things, because there's so many different types of people, cultures, ways of doing things in the entire world that you might not think of. I mean, even in America, there's so many different cultures. Like if you just stay in your hometown the entire time, you're never going to see the rest of America. You're never going to understand why this state wants to do this and this state wants to do that. And I'm not going to get political, but red versus blue stuff. Like there's so many different cultures within every part of the United States that you can learn. Like, oh, this is why these people think that way. And this is why
I
it's crazy alone in the
yeah.
United States versus, and then you have the rest of the world opened up from there. You know, it gets even
I
crazier.
I really think that we're more open-minded when we're empathetic, and I think that
Oh
travel
yeah.
creates empathy. Like I know that when I see something on the news about a country that I visited, I feel a personal connection and a personal pain and a personal desire to help. And when I see something about a country that I've never visited, it's much easier for me to not be emotionally invested and just like, change the channel or flip over to the next article. And I think it's the same thing in the
Hmm.
United States. Not to get too political, but as a generalization, a lot of Republicans don't have passports and tend to be a lot more isolated in rural places, where the liberal cities are much more metropolitan, much more international, and a higher percentage of Democrats do have passports and do travel, which is why I think that they gravitate more towards wanting to have more of a positive impact in on a global scale, and also wanting to have more social programs and more social justice because they're not just isolated.
Yeah,
So
it's a valid point. It could absolutely be the case. I'm not sure on. It could absolutely be that. I agree.
that's a personal opinion, and yeah, I definitely don't want to get into politics. My big politics are just to stay open minded and
Yeah,
to help as many
yeah.
people as we can with the wealth that we have.
I think
Um,
you've hit the nail on the head. That's stay in the middle and stay empathetic and stay helping people. I think that's the three main things you got to do. There's no point in getting all caught up in one side or the other, because at the end of the day, that doesn't do anything for everybody. You're just trying to
I
help your
agree,
side in
and I
this.
think if nothing else, living through this whole pandemic, I think that we got to really see firsthand what happens when we don't help each other.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
leaving how much everybody really does need healthcare and really does need kindness and really does need to be connected. And but
yeah. And again, it goes back to that
anyway,
understanding of how I, and how, because they left it up to the state level, and then there's this weird thing where now all the states are different. Like, when have we ever seen that ever in our? I mean, we know they're all different, but to see it on a news schedule and a news basis of like this state's doing this and this state's doing that, and that's when it comes even weirder, because it's almost like that understanding's out the window, because you can have someone say, well, they shouldn't be doing that, we're doing this, and yada yada yada, whereas like, no, 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 these are not. And I'm not saying which one's right and which one's wrong, but they're both, again, they're different little cultures in the big culture of America, and they do things differently.
hmm
And there's that, and again, that understanding comes in where it's kind of just flown out the window, we've seen as well in the pandemic, versus having that empathy of like, okay, they're doing things their way, and that's okay. And we hope it works for them. And we're going to do things our way, and we hope it works for us. And then at the end of the day, we'll just see who's just doing better. And if we have to adjust our things, we adjust our things. It's okay to be like, you know what? We thought this would help. It's not. We're doing it this way now.
everything is always in flux, and that's
Yes.
I like that you're
Mm-hmm.
saying talking about adjustments. There's a lot of the entrepreneurial, actually, and spiritual books and things I've read is really about not being fully attached to outcome and being able to admit when something isn't working and
Yeah.
moving on and going in a different direction.
It's something that's vital, but also it's super hard to do on a personal level, especially if you've put time into something. You know, you're like,
Oh,
I don't want to do.
absolutely.
I don't
That's
want to
like,
change it up. You know, you're like, you're just
oh,
like, I don't want to.
absolutely. Like any relationship ever, but it feels really good to clean house.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll
Again,
do that. I'll be working and I'll have like 20 tabs open, and it's so overwhelming each time, and sometimes I'll accidentally close them all, and for a split second I'm like, wait, shit. And I'm like, oh wait, no, this is a fresh start now. This feels
I
a
love
lot
it.
better.
That is like the
Like,
perfect analogy for how you could do your life. So you have 30 tabs open, you just meditate, boop, you hit the refresh button, you're good to go.
was you're really attached to all those tabs. You don't necessarily remember why, but
That's
just close
so
them.
funny.
Just
Oh my
close
god,
them.
that's a great analogy. Yes, yes. Clear your tabs out, people. Clear your tabs out.
Yeah.
That's genius. Um,
Hey, love, can I take a 1 minute break?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do what you gotta do.
Okay. I warned you about my small bladder. I'll be right back.
You're good. We have a 1 minute break. and it's just gonna be me chatting everybody. We can. What do you guys want to chat about? It's just me.